Legislatures across the nation are expressing concern over the executive powers granted to governors during the COVID-19 state of emergency, and Minnesota is no exception. A measure to provide legislative oversight of federal aid passed the Senate with bipartisan support this week.
So there's a lot of unanswered questions that, again, I think it takes the lens of the Senate, the House, and the governor and his staff to take a look at and make sure that these federal appropriations are done correctly and that are fair and equitable for everybody involved that has been touched by COVID-19. So yes, these are unprecedented times, but I think we have a system, we have a body in place, and we have the framework to discuss these issues and be nimble and be quick to get this money out.
I just have a really big concern that we're setting a precedent, you know, the saying of if it ain't broken, don't fix it. If the LAC is working, if this fund that we just created during session so the governor could have some flexibility is working, why do we want to push for a bigger change that we have no idea what the unintended consequences are? I feel very uncomfortable moving in this direction, not because I don't want to have a voice and I don't have a right to have a voice in where these funds go, but the practicality of it, members. I believe that if we're coming, if we leave here May 18th and there's an emergency and money needs to be allocated right away, that it will take days or weeks, and if not even longer, to come together to an agreement before we come to a special session.
We're going to get almost $2 billion that if we do nothing, the governor has complete discretion about how that money should be spent. And frankly, I think it's really important that the legislative bodies, the House and Senate, work with the governor. We're the ones that appropriate money, and I think that should be the case here. And so as we move forward, think about that. One of the things that was brought forward is, well, you know, what are we going to spend the money on? Well, that's the point. We know it's going to be COVID-19 related, but is it going to be related to the hog farmers and the hundreds of thousands of hogs that have been euthanized, or the chickens that have been destroyed and made into dog food because the restaurants were closed and they no longer needed eggs and they no longer needed bacon? And is that a decision we're going to make? Who's going to make that decision? Is that the governor, or is that the governor working with the legislative bodies?
I'm a no vote on this bill. I agree that we need legislative oversight, but the better process would be to continue to let MMB administer the funds with LAC oversight, as we do with other federal funds. The question was raised by my esteemed colleague, what about politics? And here's what I see. If the House and the Senate agree, the LAC process will take care of things just fine. Our concern is when the House and the Senate disagree and the effect that can have on the timing and the administration of these funds. I think the public is quite confident in the governor's ability to protect us. We are under a state of emergency.
We are in for some really, really hard times. And I couldn't think of a better way to spend however many billion and a half or whatever it's going to be to patch the holes and help recovery happen than by a collaborative approach. And with all respect to the people that are in the administration, they don't live in 87 counties. They don't hail from 67 Senate districts and 134 House districts where they touch the people day in and day out. They are fine human beings, but they simply aren't connected the way we are to understand.
We now have an emergency powers that has exceeded any other emergency power that I can recall in the history. And this is happening today. To put all that responsibility in one person, clearly, our Minnesota Constitution saw the separation of powers, that the legislature would function by appropriation, and the executive branch would follow that appropriation and take care of those many details in accordance with the rest of Minnesota law.
There is a history in this particular chamber of not acting expeditiously on something that is very clear, very easy, non-controversial. And so that is why you see people saying, wait a minute, we need to make sure that we have a process that really will work, that will not be politicized, and that we can take care of the needs of the people of Minnesota in this challenging time.
So I spoke with the bill's author and chair of the Finance Committee, Senator Julie Rosen.
The governor and leaders of the DFL and Republican caucus have a good working relationship, and some measures related to the pandemic have been passed. You want the legislature to remain involved in decision-making after adjournment. How do you envision this legislation?
Well, the legislation that we passed off the floor on a very strong bipartisan measure on Monday, basically says that any money that is out, the 1.8 billion that is sitting at MMB needs to be legislated by law, which says the legislature has the control over that money. And as you said, we have done a very good job. We have a very good relationship. We've passed, I believe, 5 separate COVID-19 bills in an extremely bipartisan manner, very quickly to show that we are moving forward on this. It's just that this is a tremendous amount of money, taxpayers' money, that needs to have the voice of the taxpayers. It needs to have legislative control over that money to make sure that it has been vetted through properly, and that and this is what we do. We legislate, we appropriate money. So we're very good at it.
As you said, this is a vast sum of money that's coming. There may be more money coming down the pike. Some, though, are arguing that the governor needs the utmost flexibility, and you say there needs to be oversight. Can the legislative oversight not get in the way of flexibility and quickly responding to events as they occur, as needs as they arise?
Oh, absolutely. And I think we can hit a very good point here, and maybe a hybrid where in the last big round of money, 298 million, 200 of that was for the governor's ability to be very quick, nimble, and then there was oversight by the COVID-19 commission. That can stop that amount of money going out, but it just has to have an approval going forward. But we do have the ability to stop it. And I think that was a compromise. It's worked very well. We have a 24-hour window to give our approval up and down. And so far, the governor's appropriations, we've all given the approval in a very quick manner. So that is something perhaps that we could implement in this next round, that he still has the ability to move quickly on some funding, but not 1.8 billion. And clearly there are federal funds that go to MMB, and they have the right to appropriate them, but they're more, for example, the disaster account for flooding, that's $30 million. Other programs that have already got a grant system set up. This is going to be all new appropriations to perhaps cities, counties, townships, to other entities that have COVID-19 related expenses. And that's going to take more of a deep dive and a clearer lens than what MMB is set up to do. They just don't have the time or the bandwidth.
So if this bill becomes law, does it mean then that the governor would need to call a special session to bring the legislature back to delve into this?
Well, hopefully he will sign it before the end of session and we can start getting some money out. That's the intent, is that this is signed quickly. But also, I think there is the ability to maneuver. Yes, I'm sure there's going to be special sessions to deal with this. We have an August forecast that's coming out. Never has MMB done a August forecast. And we will probably be back to address the budget deficit that we're facing. We also have a May budget projection coming out next week from MMB. That'll give us a snapshot of what's going on since March 17th, basically. That's when it all kind of fell apart. So yeah, we will definitely be called back, and we do have a good working relationship, and no one has given me a good reason why this cannot work.
So you've kind of talked a little bit about events in the future. So I want you to look into your crystal ball. When will the legislature be done dealing with the fallout from this pandemic?
Well, Shannon, if you would have asked me 10 days ago, maybe even a week ago, I think my answer would have been a little bit different than what it is today. The Council of Economic Advisors, which we all listen to, and there are advisors that come in from all over the nation, they, of course, say that it's going to be tough, and we've seen the GDP drop. I mean, it's just, everything is just kind of falling apart. But now that the ag economy and our paper mills are shut down, the taconite industry is shuttered, it's a little bit different landscape. So I am probably a less hopeful that we're going to have a quick turnaround, even with our strong budget reserve that we have, one of the strongest in the nation. And we seem to be paying our bills very well. But the ag community, the ag economy definitely drives the state. So it's imperative we get them back up those packing plants, the food supply, the food chain, the ethanol industry, the corn prices, the crop prices back up. We've got to do all we can to make sure that we stabilize the ag industry, because it really does drive this state. And it's going to be a while. Well, I'm sure, I know we're going to be facing a very substantial budget deficit next year.
Senator Rosen, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Shannon.